We are talking to retired U.S. Navy Chief Masters at Arms, Sean Cahill. He was part of the Nimitz Tic Tac UAP eyewitnesses. He was there, and he just described going in for a briefing, and he had to post somebody at the door to make sure that nobody was trying to pull rank to get into this top secret meeting. And when you guys are meeting, what happens in that room? What do you think you have just witnessed? What conclusions do you draw, or what do you do?
Well, it was our normal evening intelligence briefing and an operations briefing, and we really didn't touch on the subject. There was a small joke made at the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation. And remember, this is in '04, so it was pretty primitive. But a little Mars Attacks type style alien icon shot across the screen with some spooky music, and the half of us in the room who knew what was going on had a little laugh, and then took a second to explain it to the remaining chiefs and officers and sailors in the room, before the captain just said, "Well, we had a lot of fun this week. Fun's over. Let's get back to work." And that was it.
But then when did somebody come in and fly and take all of the video or all of the confidential readings that you guys took? When did that happen? We didn't learn about that publicly until 2017. The personnel that were involved in the exchange of those radar tapes, to include Petty Officer Gary Voorhees and probably our captain at the time, they signed non-disclosure agreements and were told not to make that data public. So we didn't find that out until 2017, when Luis Elizondo resigned in protest from the program that sprang up after that sighting, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program at Pentagon. That was when we really found out that Tic Tac was an esoteric event, that this was something exotic and not within our arsenal. And we found out recently with the report confirms that Tic Tac and these other sightings that fall into 144 sightings, of which only one was determined to be a weather balloon, and of those, a very large portion were determined to show the 5 observables, or what we call exotic technology. So I've spoken to Luis Elizondo. I find him extraordinarily credible. He was the former director of Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. He was also the right-hand man to Petraeus. And from what I understand, Petraeus said, Luis, what do you think about of UFOs? And he said, quite frankly, sir, I don't think of UFOs. And Petraeus said, perfect. That's exactly who I want to lead this. He didn't think about it. He didn't have any, horse in the game, if you will. He just was looking for the truth. And what he told us was this was happening a lot, and in fact is still going on. And he said we have observations of them, tracking our bases and even our nuclear launch sites, et cetera, et cetera. Did any of this? Why was none of this in that report?
Well, I think a lot of people wanted everything in that report. They were only given 180 days. They were given a very vague scope to basically return all the data. It was almost an impossible mission to complete in 180 days. The fact that they were smart enough to put a fence around it and try to make sense of a certain period of time or a certain number of cases made a lot of sense to me. But what we have fought from day one, and what we fought back in 2004 on board the Princeton when we were trying to discuss this in a rational manner, is the stigma that surrounds this subject that has gone on for 70 years of ufology and of amateur study, and of course obfuscation by the government, by stovepiping, by special access programs. The truth of whatever UAP is still remains to be seen. But at least for the first time, we have our clause in history saying this is real. We've been told about it. They did show us the annexes. The Deputy Secretary of Defense immediately responded by ordering all services to report UAP up the chain of command within 2 weeks of sightings. And there's a lot of talk about establishing a permanent entity that will act as a clearinghouse with the past data and future data to ensure that the American people and then the world get a good understanding of what this is without revealing our weapon systems and electrical optical systems that keep us safe.
So Louise told me that, we're tracking them and they're doing things that there is no way a country has developed this kind of technology because it couldn't be isolated. It's so far ahead of its time that it would affect other things in the society. So we've ruled out, I know that we've ruled out in this report that it is, American technology. Do you believe that this is not some secret thing that we've got going on?
I'm pretty pragmatic when it comes to that. I think most of us would look at this and say, if it has been studied for 70 years, of course, some aspect of the government or military is probably doing some kind of testing to understand this and probably trying to mimic the technology. But I think if we look at popular science and physics and look at our experts, we realize that all of them are scratching their heads as to how this technology operates the way it does. So if someone here that pays taxes and has an email address has leapfrogged the rest of us in understanding and production and technology, I would be completely astounded to find out this was us or a near peer. Now, do we have some aspects of the technology? It wouldn't surprise me.
But not all of it.
I don't believe that for a moment.
Okay. So did this report, because you said, look at this, you should look at it differently. What were the things in there that gave you hope that, this was just not just more of the, it's crazy people in tinfoil hats kind of stuff? What makes you feel good about this report?
I've been lucky enough for the past 3 years to have studied this entire subject. Basically, when I met Luis Elizondo and when he interviewed me for a program for the History Channel, when we got our mics off, I asked Lou, I said, if you're not a BSer, if you're not another one of those folks coming out trying to make a buck on some nonsense, I said, I'll put my boots back on for you and I'll go to work with you to figure this out. He made it pretty clear to me over the last 3 years how much I could trust him and how loyal he is to the American people. We have so much to learn about this. And before Friday, it was absolute nonsense. It was completely denied as even being a phenomena. The programs were being denied by the DOD. The public affairs officer of the DOD, whether she was directed or whether it was her personal inclination to do so, has smeared Luis in the public eye. They've lied about him. So there's something about this subject that really needs a reckoning. It needs to be dragged out into the daylight, and it needs to be shown to all of us. I'm confused at how we keep it nonpartisan. That's still a struggle to me, to keep it out in the open for all of us and make sure that no one grabs onto this and tries to own it. I think that would be very dangerous. But beyond
how do you see that? I mean, I think this is so far beyond politics. This is about human. This is the greatest possible discovery of all time. If any of this is confirmed to be otherworldly, this affects everyone from outer Mongolia to, upstate New York. Everybody it should be on the same page on this one.
I'm very happy to hear you say that, because it's the only way that we're going to figure this out is with 7 billion perspectives being shared with each other. Because if this was an easy subject, we'd already have these answers. There wouldn't be 70 years of confusion and obfuscation requiring a task force and an inspector general investigation, and requiring someone like Lou to give up his pension to resign in protest. None of these things should have been required were this an easy subject. So the fact that we now have it in history and we know it's real, we have somewhere to go now.
So is one of the reasons why we are not being let in on this, is it possible that it works to our advantage? Let's say we know it's not us, but we're not sure what it is. We don't want to come out and clearly say we don't know what it is, or we definitely know it's not us, because it would make us. If the Chinese are thinking that could be them, then we're put into a good strategic situation. Same thing with the Chinese or anybody else, why deny and come out and say, guys, that's not us. Let's share information. Because as long as there's that seed of doubt, it strengthens the posture of each side. Does that make sense to you?
It makes
Do you know what I'm saying?
To me. I think what's unfortunate right now is we live in such a polarized world where any of us in this conversation can immediately point out who the adversaries we might be talking about are. And so we have some bridges to build here. If we could form an international entity that had oversight over this, there's got to be some level that we can all talk to each other about this. There's got to be some level where we can recognize the importance of this, and where, if this is technology, the fact that if it's not communicating directly with us, well, we certainly want to gain this level of technology. And I would assume that we would want to maintain our maturity as we go along with it and not try to dominate each other. That's what frightens me. I think it frightens a lot of people. I think a lot of people are very quick to hope this is aliens because we understand what humans do already. And a lot of people are gambling that aliens might have a better take on it. It's a big universe out there. And like most folks, I don't claim to have met anyone from out there that's told me what it's really like. So I don't know if they even have a conception of good and bad. So I think we have a lot to learn together as a species about this subject, and we're going to have to do it together.
Are you hearing from any other countries that you know of? Is anyone even obliquely reported the same kind of things? Because talking to Louise, it sounds like, in fact, I talked to somebody else that said we are tracking these for weeks at a time. It's not like these are just, I think I saw that. No, we're tracking them for weeks at a time. So is any other country reporting this at all?
That is such a good question, because this is a worldwide phenomenon. There are many other countries that have acknowledged programs, countries like France, Brazil, Russia. But the problem is that question of why no one else takes the lead. And why does Russia, this is my opinion based on my studies, but Russia is very interested in muddying the waters with this subject. It's been around for 70 years. It's been stigmatized and played with by everybody. So to finally come to the table and do something about it together would be the right answer. But I'm also concerned this is a tool for chaos if used by the wrong people.
Well, thanks for brightening all of our days with ending with that. I can't thank you enough, Sean, for coming on and talking about this. I know this is a difficult subject because people think it's crazy. And what I think is crazy is the fact that more people aren't aware of the difference between, Area 51 talk and this. Things have changed in the last couple of years, and the government is now admitting things that they never admitted before. And it's something that every American, every being on Earth should be looking at and discussing openly right now, and not getting into conspiratorial games, but just say, look, something is happening, and what is it, and how are we going to deal with it? And I thank you for being a logical messenger. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Glenn.